Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Game Over Vancouver. I am your host, Zach Clarke. Joining me is friend of the show, Karen Krobach, after the Canucks suffer a 3-1 loss at the hands of the Vegas Golden Knights. Tanner Pearson revenge arc. Another kind of tough performance by the Canucks. I mean, I liked the first period, but that was about it. But I mean, what are your thoughts, Karen, after a tough loss against the Vegas Golden Knights?
Well, I don't know, man. It's one of those things. They started a little bit slow and I don't know, I want to say like stoggy almost. It sounds gross, but kind of trouble holding the point. They picked it up and then it kind of just fell apart like it sort of does sometimes.
Like it has at several different points in the season. No, I completely agree.
Mhm.
I know you wanted to have a message you want to say at the top of the stream, so let's get that started with some notable shoutouts.
Absolutely. First, very, very important shout out for me personally to one of my very dear friends, Kayla. Huge Canucks fan. I promised her last time I would say hey, and I forgot. So this is making up for that. But also a notable shout out to Scott Oak, just awarded the Order of Canada. I'm pretty sure anybody who's ever watched hockey knows Scott Oak, but also, just for his work that he's done throughout Canada with, opening recovery centers and just all of the hard work that he's done. So huge congratulations. The Order of Canada is such a huge thing.
No, absolutely, and Scott Oak, yeah, obviously those are more for his humanitarian contributions, but I know him as just an awesome broadcaster, and he has been for so many years now. Great messages to get off the bat, and now let's go to some less great messages. The Canucks just weren't up to the task tonight, and it sucks because the first period kind of made you believe that they would be. Started well with a kind of a bit of a dirty goal from Kiefer Sherwood. It was, or not Kiefer Sherwood, sorry. It was I believe Bluger who got the first goal on that tap home, and it, again, not a pretty goal, but exactly the kind of goal that the Canucks kind of need to be able to put together, which is where you win a board battle in front of the net and then get that home. And for me, the biggest story of the game was just how hard the battles went from being won to lost outside of the first period. I mean, the Canucks were winning most of their board battles the whole first period. And the second and third period, it just felt like they were completely deflated and not in the fight, despite leading it through 20.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was there was one that Kiefer Sherwood had, and I think the way Shorty put it was like, oh yeah, Dangles does it another time just for fun, and then he's off, kind of a thing. It's just like just kind of making almost like child's play out of it, but like yeah, you have moments like that, but you got to have games like that for it to actually really matter. And yeah, it's I I will always be a Canucks fan, but it's kind of exhausting to see it ramp up and then fall apart over and over and over and over and over again.
No, absolutely. It has been kind of a theme for the Canucks, and I thought tonight they might finally be able to outdo their opponents on the shot clock, because that's something I've been lamenting for several weeks now, is that the Canucks are always being outshot by their opponents, and through the first period, they had nearly double Vegas' shots, 11-6. And then, as Alfred Cliffhanger Canuck points out, 2 shots in the second period. 2! And I mean, that's just unacceptable for an NHL level offense. 2 shots is just not enough. And so I said to you during the game that this is a question I'd pose at some point tonight. Is it time we have a conversation about Rick Tocchet's style of offense, or is it the players simply needing to pick it up? Because I don't. From what we saw in the first period, we know that Rick Tocchet's strategies can work because the Canucks were handily outplaying the Golden Knights. However, that completely fell apart in the second. And my question to you is that more of a coaching issue? Or do you think that's simply something the players have to be able to continuously pump out that energy throughout more than just 20?
Well, I think that's okay. So I think that's been talked about a lot. And I think it's important to remember that it is absolutely not a dichotomy. Like, it is not one thing or the other, it's both. It's you know Toggett's gotta make sure that he's putting together lineups that are working for his guys that day. Like, because the energy is going to fluctuate all the time.
Yeah.
So, yes, the players have to step up and they've got to do their jobs. I'm looking at a few players in particular. But overall, I mean, everybody's got to make sure they show up and they go to work. But at the same time, that's one of the coach's jobs, is to manage those lines, manage that chemistry. And if something's not working, maybe don't do it anymore. Right? Like, so I don't think it's one or the other. I think it has to be both.
Yeah, and that's completely fair. And there have been kind of things that haven't been working. And you know what? Let's get into it right off the top of the show. The kind of juiciest drama. A very notable and known fact at this point is that Miller and Pettersson do not work. Now that counts together as teammates and as personalities in the locker room. And we've now heard their relationship troubles off ice go back pretty much as far as they've known each other, with both coaches Bruce Boudreau and ex-head coach Travis Green saying that they knew about the issues between those two. Now, it struggles to me to understand how you can't just put aside, personal issues and get together. However, it is a different dynamic than just being coworkers than when you're actually on a team with someone, and you almost have to treat them like they're your brother. But it's a tough situation for the Canucks to manage, because really the only option they have for long-term success as a team is those two figuring it out. But through 6 years of knowing each other now, they just, or I guess 5, they just haven't.
You know what? And that's, I mean, yeah, as teammates, you got to be able to trust each other. You got to be able to know that once you hit the ice, no matter what, buddy's got your back. But if you've got this like sneaky, like whatever thing, even if it's subconscious on the ice or whatever, it's going to eat away at things. And that's sort of where, I mean, I noticed they were not on the same lines. So that sort of comes back to, Tocchet is, I think, obviously trying to manage that chemistry or lack thereof, anti-chemistry, if you will. But yeah, it's like, come on, guys, we gotta pull together. We are all Canucks.
Yeah, you should be able to rally for the crest, which is what a lot of people have said, and get behind the logo that you play for, the team, what it means to be. And hopefully that is what they end up doing, what they figure out. But as you rightfully pointed out, really notable that they were not on Power Play 1 together. We actually saw 2 different instances of Power Play 1, one with just Miller, and the other where they replaced Miller with Pettersson. So we've seen Rick Tocchet try both. Now, neither really worked. Both looked terrible. And honestly, it's hard to pick which one of them was worse tonight. I do think the obvious answer is Elias Pettersson. Of course, Pettersson had a few notable puck touches tonight, and unfortunately, all of them were hugely negative. You think back to the first power play, which is one that he was on, gets a pretty good pass. He's in the bumper position right in the middle, and instead of trying to fire it on the one-timer like the Pettersson of old might have, or nailing a pass out to the opposite winger, he tries to send it back up to his defenders, puts it right between them, and shuts down the whole power play. The other most notable chance, with 30 seconds left in the game, Kevin Lankinen heading to the bench, and Pettersson puts it right up the middle, turning it over to Vegas, and then they immediately score the game-ending empty net goal. So, really, really tough performance for both Miller and Pettersson tonight, but Pettersson, I mean, this might have been the worst game of the season.
Yeah, it's really difficult because I've been trying to, throw Petey a bone here every once in a while. I've been trying to be like, nah, he's just in his head. He's gonna figure it out. And I'm getting really, 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 I'm done. Like after in my opinion, he single-handedly destroyed that power play. They were doing so good. They were set up. They had the energy. They had the momentum. And from how I felt about that game, I felt like that's where the Canucks started to fall apart, was after that loss of control on that power play. And it was just, even Shorty said it in the broadcast too, or maybe it was Tomlinson, I don't know, that you could see the self-doubt there. He double clutched, and he it's almost like he gets in the moment and he panics and he just kind of throws the puck wherever and nobody's there. And
Yeah.
it absolutely destroyed the flow that they had all set up.
No, absolutely, and it's just really tough because I also do think that for a Stanley Cup contending team, you need to have all your guns firing on the power play. I mean, take a look at Edmonton. How insane would it be if you saw McDavid on power play 1 and Draisaitl on power play 2? It would never happen. And so, if the Canucks want to be contenders, which obviously they are in a mode where they really do, they have to figure this out. It's kind of the only option now. We're seeing some questions in chat of can you trade one? How do you choose which one to keep? Or do you trade both? It's so difficult because every single one of those situations to me comes up with being a loss. We've seen in the past that if you trade the best player in a deal, 99 times out of 100, you lose that trade. The only one I could possibly think of is the Lindholm deal, or not Lindholm, sorry, the Lindros deal, where he was traded for a whole package of pieces, and they kind of ended up maybe going even in that trade, despite Lindros being the best player in that trade. Outside of that, honestly, NHL history shows you trade the best player, you're going to lose. I can't think of a feasible trade that makes sense in the NHL where you're going to trade Pettersson and get an upgraded player. And honestly, same goes with JT Miller, especially at his current skill level. Now, sure, he might fall off. That deal goes to at least 37, but as of right now, I mean, how could you possibly improve on those players? And also, what does trading them say about your general manager, who's just signed them both for 7 or more years in the past 2 seasons?
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's like if they do trade them, it's like kind of a vote of no confidence in your own decisions, which kind of then destabilizes faith in the organization as a whole, and that can be kind of a dangerous vibe. I've seen it kind of through the years with the Canucks too, how they they'll trade somebody big and maybe it's been a really good idea in the past. I can't think of anyone specific right now, but
Yeah.
then it's kind of like, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But it's too late. It's too late. So that's the thing is hindsight's always 2020, but it's hindsight and you can't really know until it happens.
Yeah.
Choosing between the two of them, it's one has one thing and the other has the other. Like it's a toss up.
No, yeah, that is the thing, is that their skill sets do really complement each other in what they bring to the team. I mean, Pettersson, of course, has the brighter future just in terms of he's so much younger than JT Miller. But I don't think many people would disagree that if you look at the past 2-3 seasons, you could argue JT Miller's been the better player. And as of late, he definitely has been. Maybe not since coming back from that recent hiatus, but before that, certainly he was. He's, the power forward in the playoffs. He was the shutdown forward, which the Canucks just really didn't have anyone else doing that. So, yeah, I mean, you have to hope they figure it out because trading them just seems so unviable. I mean, of course, there was the discussions of Pettersson to Buffalo, and just like any kind of trade comp doesn't seem like it's going to be worth it in any way, shape, or form. And of course, this regime hasn't made too many massive trades. Of course, we dealt away Bo Horvat, and then we flipped the primary piece in that trade to get Filip Hronek. And I would say that those moves have ended up to be pretty good for Vancouver, but this regime has definitely not made a trade of the magnitude that it would be if they traded Miller or Pettersson. Now, last regime, we kind of know that their big trades, sewered the franchise for years to come. So it definitely would take a leap of faith for Vancouver fans to be able to trust their general managers in making a trade of that magnitude. And as much as we hear from the NHL insiders that the Canucks are apparently big players on the trade market right now, they're trying to get a defenseman. I just can't see them trading Miller or Pettersson.
Yeah, they're unfortunate pieces of the puzzle, but they're pieces nonetheless. No, I definitely agree. Like, I'm not saying tonight Miller's game was amazing, but it was better than Petey's game. Cause, yeah, poor Petey.
Yeah, I mean,
he's got to figure it out, man.
He definitely had the more egregious errors. I will say that I didn't actually know that Miller necessarily played better overall. They were both. The thing is that's why the Canucks can't win games. Is they were both just terrible. I mean, in a 1-goal game that gets pulled like empty net at the time, 1-goal game, your stars have done nothing. Now, obviously not counting Quinn Hughes. He's perfect and can do no wrong. But the other stars on the team, namely in the forward core, absolutely nothing. Pedersen and Miller through 40 minutes combined for 0 shots. Neither one had one. I mean, your superstars, supposed superstars, are generating absolutely nothing. You can't win. It does not matter. I mean, that's the thing, is all of the Canucks issues, as simple and repetitive as a point this is, come down to the fact that their superstars have to be their superstars, and they're just not.
Yeah, I mean, Quinn was doing his game tonight. He was doing his thing. He was making big plays. They weren't offensive plays, but they don't necessarily have to be because that's not technically his job. But I mean, and Sherwood, he had some chances. At least he was getting in there, taking shots and whatever. I saw Garland take a few shots, but I mean, like the one, no shade to Bluger, but your one goal is Bluger.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Come on,
Yeah.
please. I think the one Canuck that did actually have a decent game tonight was Lankinen,
Yep.
as usual. I mean, because for some of those saves, I was thinking like, whoa, did his pads catch his flu? Because those saves were sick. Like,
Nice. Nice. I mean, they absolutely were. That paddle save was incredible.
yeah,
And it just sucks that the Canucks kind
beautiful.
of waste a performance like that. Now, thankfully, Kevin Lankinen has been the epitome of consistency and will apparently never stop giving performances like that. But, I mean, tonight did feel like a wasted effort for how well he played. I mean, that was a superhuman save off of not a great Canucks defensive play, although I thought that play was kind of more Vegas being good as opposed to the Canucks being bad. And
Yeah.
Lankinen just bails them out with just a crazy stop. That paddle save, one of the best saves of the year for sure for any goaltender, not just Canucks goaltenders. But yeah, just looking back overall, really not that good. And then another point that we were talking about on air or during the game was that the Canucks just do not have enough puck moving from their defense. And so obviously it has been said that the Canucks are really, really hot in pursuing a defenseman on the trade market. But honestly, I do really think it has to come as soon as possible. You can't get scammed. Got to wait for the right trade, but they've got to be looking all day and all night because right now, I mean, Eric Brandstrom is just not good enough to take on huge minutes defensively. I love the franchise, and I've been a defender of him ever since he came here. But even I can realize you probably can't play him outside of a bottom pairing role. And outside of Quinn Hughes and then the low minutes Brandstrom, there is just no movement of the puck. And I think that that's a big reason that the Canucks are so bad in terms of generating shot quality because they have no way to get the puck up the ice from their defensive core. Therefore, their forwards are forced to play dump and chase hockey, and then stump and chase hockey where they're only winning the board battles 40% of the time. And it's just not been a recipe of success for the Canucks for a while. And so I think it comes back to what you said, Karen, about it being a dichotomy of what the Canucks players need to be better, whether that's the individuals that are on the team now or whether players need to be added, but then also perhaps Tocchet could try to adjust his game style to make up for the lack of puck movement from the defense.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, if things aren't working and the things that you normally try, normally like a certain style or whatever is not working, start thinking outside the box. I mean, I'm not saying like way, way, way outside the box that we're getting weird or anything, but like, you know, pull rabbits out of hats, Canucks, please.
Yeah, no, it's just been such a weird year for the Canucks where you just don't
Yeah.
feel like you can read them whatsoever. Because, I mean, again, you look at their previous games, I mean, that Bruins game was just awful. That was just 5 days ago on my birthday. That was 5 days ago. One of the worst games we've ever seen from the Canucks. Literally 2 days later was the 3-1 win against the Avalanche where they utterly destroyed a team that won the Cup just 3 years ago. Then they lost to Utah in a weird game that kind of was a bit back and forth, but didn't feel like a great game. But still, you have some hope. You know what? Utah's an underrated team, and then they come into the game tonight and just don't perform. And you just at this point, there's no consistency from this team. You have no idea what to expect night in, night out. And it sucks because they keep giving you these tantalizing tastes of what can be. They show you how good the team can be, then they go and lay an egg for 3 games straight before they show you it again.
It's just, it kind of triggers my 2011 Cup run-ness, where it's like, yeah, they're gonna do it. Oh no, they're not. Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. I mean, we can say it. We can say it till we're blue in the face, or blue and green in the face, whatever you want to, Canucks colors, whatever.
Of
But
course.
they've got to find a way. They've got to find a way.
They do, and so we will see what they can do heading into the future. So why don't we move on to the second segment of the show now? We'll move on to period 2. And, of course, that means time for me to remind you that you fine folks to check out the Hyperdrive Hockey, the flagship show of the Game Over Network. All things hockey across various leagues in multiple countries, whatever it is and wherever it is. Max, Daphne, and Kev have you covered for all your hockey news with a steady dose of fun and fan engagement. You can find Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Network YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts on the Hyperdrive Hockey page at thegameovernetwork.com. So looking to the Canucks, I mean, we kind of discussed what we thought went wrong tonight. Let's look at what we hope is going to go right in the future and some things that we're looking at for the Canucks. Because as weird of a season as it's been, and as much as I do think this team needs fixes, you absolutely can't go out and get the wrong fixes. And once again, we've seen what the wrong fixes can look like 6 or 7 years ago, whenever the OEL trade was for the Canucks. And funnily enough, that was for a star defenseman. So they do have to make sure they get it right. Now, one option that they were looking at that's now off the market is Will Borgen in Seattle, as of course he was just traded for Capo Caco. And so the market keeps getting shorter. And the thing is the longer you wait on getting a defenseman, the less there are. And the less there are, the pricier they'll be. There's, of course, supply and demand. And everyone knows that the Canucks right now are desperate.
Well, and with contracts that are large in other areas of the team, there's not a ton of wiggle room either with that.
No,
Like,
you're right.
so they have to, if they're gonna do something, they've got to do it soon. Like, it's one of those things you can't sit on your hands for too long, or you know, it's just it's not going to work out.
No,
Now
absolutely.
who they would get at this point, I'm not even sure. I was really actually hoping for that, and I was actually kind of sad when I saw,
For
oh well,
Borgen,
he's
yeah.
oh well. Yeah, it's tough. It's gonna get tougher as time goes on.
No, absolutely. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about Borgen. I do think he'd be an upgrade on someone like Eric Brandstrom, but I don't think he'd be that much of an upgrade to the point where it's worth kind of trading for him. Um, so that's kind of how I feel about it. I don't mind them not getting him. He was definitely on my radar in terms of who makes sense for the Canucks. I just hope that they try and get kind of a bigger impact player, because I feel like Will Borgen kind of a little bit of a lower impact player on the team. But yeah, it's going to be really tough trying to find trades that work right now for this hockey team, because it's just not a lot of things that don't necessarily make sense, and you also don't want to part with certain pieces. Like, it would suck to lose Jonathan Lekkerimäki. I'd be more willing to
Yeah.
part with Tom Willander. It still don't want to necessarily part with him, but of course, if you think about it, if you're thinking that the Canucks kind of prime area to win a cup is in the next 3 or 4 years, I could lose Tom Willander, because I don't know if he'll be a major impact player on this team in that timeline. But still, not necessarily pieces you want to move. So trade market isn't necessarily that easy to figure out. Looking forward to who the Canucks are playing soon. The Ottawa Senators next this Saturday, 7 p.m. That'll be a really fun one. The Sens wagon keeps on going, baby. Go Senators. That'll actually be on the Game Over Ottawa channel. So check out that. It'll be a crossover episode over on their channel. So please do check out that one. Now, I do also quite closely follow the Senators. They won yet again tonight, with Linus Ullmark being incredible as usual, and they won in overtime thanks to Brady Tkachuk. So Sens are a wagon right now. They are rolling, and the Canucks have to be careful not to get crushed here, as they have now lost 2 in a row, and this Sens team's red hot. So I'm interested to see what version of the Canucks we get, because honestly, this is one of the most confused I've felt about this team in a long time, because their high is so high. They can beat any team in this league when they're on their game. But they've shown now that their low is so low that they can lose to any team as well. And we'll find that out when they play against one of the worst teams in the league, the San Jose Sharks. Although, wow, is Macklin celebrating good.
To quote Forrest Gump, but change a little bit, the Canucks are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that couldn't be more accurate with how they've been playing right now. There's just no consistency to this roster whatsoever, apart from goaltending, which has been night in, night out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the two things. It's like, okay, so if we have a cage match between Lankinen and Olmark, okay, who wins? let's just forget everybody else for a minute.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it could come down to being a goaltender's battle. We'll see if Allmark plays. I imagine that he will because it's not like a back-to-back kind of thing. But of course, he started the last few games, and he's just been he's been the reason the Sens season has turned around. So obviously, the Canucks, it's been everything but goaltending that's been kind of the issue for them. So we'll see. I mean, the Sens, they've had a bit of a tough season as well. Funnily enough, like two very different narratives, but they're actually quite similar in the standings right now. But of course, the Canucks kind of on a downward trend while the Sens were on an upward one. But I mean, both teams have had a great puck-moving defenseman in Quinn Hughes and Thomas Chabot. Obviously, Hughes a little bit higher quality of the two. But the difference right now is the Sens forwards. Like, they have superstars that have been compared to Hughes Pettersson and Miller in the past in Stützle and Tkachuk, which are kind of similar archetypes of players. And you can see when those guys are going, that team's a wagon. And arguably, JT Miller and Pettersson both have higher ceilings. So it's just so frustrating watching this team knowing how dominant they can be and just having your superstars just never there.
Yeah, no, and that's just it. Like, and I think right now that's one of the differences between the Sens and the Canucks is that like their forwards are showing up a lot more. And I mean, I've said it before. Your goaltender can play an absolute perfect game, brick wall, but nobody's gonna win until somebody scores. The goaltender can't score on his own. I mean, it happens, but like it's not his job,
No.
right? So that's the thing is our big guys got to start showing up more.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, we won't try to make it too negative. There were a lot of players that did, I think, play pretty well tonight. I liked Teddy Bluger, although was pretty brutal in the face-off dot. David W. posting some nice face-off stats in chat, as he so often does. And Bluger went 2 for 7 tonight, although Pius Suter, 2 for 11, which does suck. I mean, I know he spent a lot of time on the wing lately, but part of his game is his ability to play center and his ability to be versatile. So you definitely hope that he doesn't kind of transition out of being able to play center. But I mean, Miller and Pettersson both doing pretty well in the draw. 6 for 9 and 7 to 10 are both pretty good. But then that was about it for their prowess tonight. So the wingers were, I thought, the kind of brighter spot for the Canucks tonight. Even then, no one really necessarily stood out. I just thought there was players that had pretty average games, like DeBrusk. The depth did pretty well. I mean, Bluger. I mean, Sherwood is every game really good. Bluger looked decent. I haven't been that high on Danton Heinen. He had a couple okay chances. And then Garland and Joshua looked pretty good as well. There was a great chance in the third period where Dakota Joshua just runs over a Vegas Golden Knight. Garland picks up the puck and gets a good shot off. But Canucks are also struggling to hit the net. In my notes, I have at least one time per period this game. I've got a note where the Canucks missed the net on a great chance, including Pettersson on the power play when he ripped it wide and the puck careens all the way back out to the Canucks own zone. So players also needing to hit the net is helping attribute to the lack of shots on goal.
Yeah, they're gonna start getting compared to stormtroopers with their aim soon. Like, man, oh man. One that I actually saw was I think it was in the first period where DeBrusk just like totally pickpocketed one of the guys. They had a good rush coming up, and DeBrusk was like, "Nope, this is mine." And they started going the other way. I mean, it didn't materialize into anything, but it was a really, really nice pick by DeBrusk. So that I was happy to see that. Sherwood, I think I said it before, like Sherwood had a lot of really good chances. He looked like Sherwood tonight I feel like their goalie did a really good job tonight as well. Like, we can't credit where it's due. I mean, he made some really great saves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, Adin Hill is still very much in contention for being Canada's #1 goaltender right now. Obviously, it does look like this Four Nations Cup will likely be Jordan Binnington getting the starting job, but I think as of right now, he's probably second on the Canadian depth chart, and he is kind of underratedly a pretty quality goaltender. I don't necessarily think his kind of high danger save percentage is necessarily as good as other top goaltenders like that. Tredemko is one of the best in the world against really high danger chances. Aiden Hill, I think more so, is just very consistent. He doesn't give up a lot of bad goals. You know what you're going to get in him. And so I did like his play tonight. I thought that both goaltenders played very well. It was kind of the only infallible part of both teams' game was the net minding tonight. But it would be interesting to see Aiden Hill maybe getting a shot in the Four Nations Cup, especially if Jordan Binnington doesn't play well, because he is a very inconsistent goaltender out there in St. Louis. So I'm interested to see which goaltender gets to start for Team Canada. But honestly, it could be either one. I really do like Aiden Hill.
Yeah, and that's the thing about consistency is you can also say it's dependability, right? You know that with, you know, him between the pipes, you've got a decent chance at coming away with a low scoring game on your end, right? Like
Yeah.
now if your offense is on fire too, well hey, you got a really good shot there. So yeah, I mean that consistency is huge, and I'm actually really glad that we have that in Lankinen as well because he had a really great game too. That save that I'm gonna remember that save for a long time. I think.
Yeah, that
It was,
save was just truly incredible. Paddle saves like that are always just so amazing. Hill could be number one for Team Canada. Yeah, I agree, Alfred. I think that Hill is kind of underrated, and he doesn't actually really have, or he's not missing anything that Binnington has. I think Binnington win the Conn Smythe in his cup run? I think he might have. And I'll quickly check that. But outside of that, they both have a cup. Is my thing. And no, he didn't. Okay, cool. So yeah, he doesn't have anything that Aiden Hill doesn't, as they both have a cup. So I think that was Binnington's biggest accolade. Now, obviously, he was unreal on that run, whether Aiden Hill was just pretty good. But I think it's been a while since Binnington's been kind of a consistently unbelievable goaltender. So we'll see which one gets the number one starting job. Another player that I wish had been named to the team, unbelievable tonight, was Macklin Celebrini. Now, Karen, I know that you more follow the Canucks than the whole league, so I don't know how much you know about Macklin Celebrini, but for me right now, it's honestly a battle between him and Connor Bedard for the hottest young prospect from North Vancouver right now, because of course Connor Bedard went number one 2 years ago, Macklin Celebrini went number one last year, and he's been incredible for San Jose, just a delight to watch, and he had a crazy move tonight that I saw on Twitter where he got away from one of the Avs defense with a sick little 360 on the wall, set up a chance down the middle. It's pretty awesome to see the amount of talent coming from our hometown, Karen.
oh yeah, no, you you got to shout the North Van boys. I
Yeah.
mean, long live those North Van boys. I don't know much about Celebrini, but obviously, just if I think if you follow hockey at all, you've heard the name at least. Also, you know, being from North Van, like I keep my ear to the ground on stuff like that as well. But yeah, I mean, it's Battle of the North Van boys. That sounds amazing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be very cool to see them kind of match off in a marquee game. It's kind of just a shame that, well, actually, the Sharks as a whole have been doing bad this year, but the rest of the Blackhawks are pretty bad at hockey, in my opinion. So they're not much of a threat right now. We'll see what they end up getting for Connor Bedard in terms of weapons, because right now he really doesn't have anyone to play alongside. So poor guy's fighting for himself. But looking back to here, Canucks moved a couple guys up and down for this game, and let me just quickly double check who they were. I know PDG was out for, I believe Carlson was in tonight, but
Mm-hmm.
not really a whole lot from the guys that got moved up and down. Yeah, Carlson, that's right, he was out there with Pedersen and DeBrusk, and it kind of says something that I had to double check that. PDG as well, and I think that the Canucks have a glut of very replaceable fourth line forwards right now. So that's why I want to see them try to move for someone better on the forward line. Because it does feel like the Canucks are missing a top, maybe not necessarily a super top end forward piece, but at least a complementary forward piece that can play either your second line or third line and contribute offensively. Whether right now there's just so many guys that you're comfortable playing in your fourth line, or even further up the lineup like tonight with PDG and Carlson, but they don't necessarily give you that production that you're looking for from a high impact forward.
Well, no, and that's the thing is if you look over PDG's numbers, like career-wise, he doesn't have a ton of points. He's also just, I think, come back from injury as well. This was like his debut game this year, I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it's nice to have somebody there. But I just want to see more of Lekkerimäki. I like I like the dude.
No, he's awesome, man. I mean, undeniably, Lekkerimäki is going to be a very good hockey player. I think at this point, his play in the minors has just been too consistently unreal to not translate. Well, I say that. We've seen players do really well in the AHL that haven't panned out in the NHL, but he looked pretty good even in his stint here. So I
Mhm.
do think Lekkerimäki will be pretty good. It's just kind of how quickly he can make the jump. And that could
Mhm.
actually be an impact in another really big question, which I'll pose to you here, which is just kind of what to do with Brock Besser. This team clearly still doesn't know. There haven't apparently been not trade talks. Contract talks have started between the two camps, but it doesn't sound like they're super close yet. And of course, he
Mhm.
expires this year and will go to free agency. So is Jonathan Lekkerimäki a possible replacement for Brock Besser, knowing that he would need to be NHL ready as soon as next year? Or should the Canucks try and re-sign him or even find a replacement via trade?
Well, okay. So the thing about Besser is he is also one of those guys who's kind of inconsistent. When he's hot, he's hot. And tonight, like where was he? Like I didn't like I have zero notes about Besser tonight. I mean I know he was there. I saw him on the ice, but like beyond that, like there was one play I was like, "Oh, come on, who was that?" And it was Besser. And I was like, "No, I'm not supposed to not like Besser
Yeah.
for no." Um I think that that comes into thinking outside the box, maybe taking a risk territory. I think that if they want Lekkerimäki to be, NHL ready, they got to give him more NHL time. Maybe
Yeah.
just here and there, kind of pepper it through the season, but give him those chances every now and then to give him that experience, right?
Yeah.
So that it prepares them. And then yeah, that's another one of those tough kind of decisions. It's not as tough as the, Petey
Yeah, yeah,
Miller
yeah. No,
situation, but
it is
yeah,
clearly a tough situation with Besser.
I think that and that's the thing is I do think that Lekkerimäki could be a really, really good piece to this Canucks puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely he will be. And that's why I think if I was to trade one of the two prospects of Lekkerimäki or Willander, I think Willander's just a bit further away from NHL readiness, and so that's why I'd
Mhm.
trade him. Now, good question for you, Alfred, that I actually was just Googling while Karen was talking, which is, aside from Bedard and Celebrini, when was the last time the Lower Mainland produced a first overall NHL prospect? I believe it might have been Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. That's my guess off the top of my head. And just having a look at this, I think for number one, I'll have to double check who actually went number one because Barzal was pretty high up in the draft as well, but I don't think he was number one. In fact, no, he was in the teens, wasn't he? Yeah, 16th overall. So I think it might have been Ryan Nugent-Hopkins that was the last BC guy to go number one overall. There have been a lot of first round picks, including BC boy who I desperately wanted the Canucks to draft last year, Zachary Benson, who's been pretty good for Buffalo. So I'd love having him in the lineup, and I maintain that would have been a good pick over Tom Willander. Not that I dislike Willander, but obviously having an NHL ready winger right now would be pretty nice for the Canucks. But some other really good prospects that have gone in the first round. But first overall, yeah, you do have to go back a while. I believe it is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So that's a good question. It does make you realize that outside of those two, yeah, BC hasn't produced any kind of. It's been a lot of Ontario talent going first overall as of late, which is understandable. They know what they're doing out there in hockey. And then yeah, some first overall picks from outside Canada as we continue to see more and more representation. Slowly but surely, the NHL has gotten less Canadian kind of every year. Although it's still, don't get me wrong, it's still mostly Canada.
Another North Van boy that went to NHL, went to our high school, Paul Korea.
Paul Korea, yeah, he just got retired, right? Or he just had some sort of ceremony. He was in the news.
Something, yeah. I'm not
And
saying he was like first round or anything, but another North fanboy.
yeah, well, I don't know enough to know if he did go in the first round. I'm gonna say he was a steal. I'm pretty sure he went fairly late in the draft. Let's see if I can find this. It doesn't want to show me. Yeah, that's right. He did go to our high school, of course, before our time. But Paul Korea was just a legend. My favorite broadcast moment of all time was that Paulie Korea goal against the New Jersey Devils off the floor on the boards. I mean, of course, really sad story in NHL history of treating concussions seriously. That moment could never happen again, but a cool broadcast call on that play. So, turning our sights back to Vancouver now, really just, to sum it up, a really disappointing performance, and it just draws so many question marks about this team going forwards. You have to find some consistency, but at the same time, I do think part of it is to not panic too much about games like this. It is hard not to because of what we've seen and because of how often these issues have happened. But at the very least, given what this team needs, it's not like major overhauls or anything. You need your stars to be your star players. That does feel like something that is likely to sort itself out. I'm not saying it certainly will. Pettersson hasn't been that good in quite a while, and JT Miller has not scored against a goaltender since October, which is, I mean, they're both not great stats. So it's been a tough stretch of games for the Canucks, but honestly, the fact that the schedule is kept as good as it is, we're still hovering at about a .500 win percentage for the past however many games. There's no reason to panic just yet. This team is all right even without their superstars. So when they get going, assuming they do, this team should be back to being a contender.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things that kind of makes Vancouver kind of a playoff bandwagon team where you get like so much more of the city gets stoked during playoff time, but like not as much during the regular season. Is like they kind of have a trend of kind of bumbling through the season, sort of making it into the playoffs, and then they really tend to turn it on in the playoffs. I'm not saying they always go super far, but you do definitely see a whole higher caliber of Canuck hockey in those playoffs. So I mean, yeah, you're gonna get that hype, and I think that's why it's such a bandwagony team, right? Now, if they could be a little bit more consistent through the season, I think that would be a little bit different. But yeah, no, I don't think it's panic time yet. They find a way. They usually find a way.
They have been, and I mean,
hope.
we saw last year that the team made several trades throughout the year, and I expect that again this year, especially given what we've heard from NHL insiders about how active the Canucks are on the trade market. And so, taking a look at the trade pieces that we got last year, it was very similar to what the Canucks need right now, which is a defenseman that can reliably play minutes, and I think that Nikita Zadorov severely outplayed expectations here in Vancouver. He came in kind of as that depth guy and ended up being an amazing defenseman for the Canucks in the playoffs. And then Elias Lindholm, who had a bad regular season since getting traded to Vancouver, but was great in the playoffs. Third on the team in points. Funnily enough, both signed with the Boston Bruins in the offseason, and both have just been terrible for their teams, which has been great to see because no one likes the Boston Bruins in this market. But turning the sights back to Vancouver, I mean, it is a little depressing right now, but you do have to remember how much better this team got after those additions. So I don't think you can pass a final judgment on a team when this just isn't close to what the final product is. However, last year, the team was playing well enough to almost earn those trades from the general manager. Yeah. He saw the team was playing well, and he thought, okay, I can make this better by bringing in these players. My question to you is, have they actually played well enough to warrant buying into this team this year?
Well, that's the thing, is if they're not performing at that caliber, it is definitely more of a risk, right? If you go out there and you try to make those deals and, spend that money, is that a sound investment at this point? And with how inconsistent they've been, it's way more of a gamble, right? So I can sort of see a little bit why they have been, as I said before, kind of sitting on their hands a little bit, because it's like, they're in a bit of a bind too. Now, something's got to give,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's definitely more of a risk at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll move on to period 3 now and kind of take one last look through the schedule. We already talked about the Sens a bit, but we'll look forward a little bit more. And of course, after period 3, the period 4 where we get to all your questions in the chat. So if you guys do have any questions you want to hear Karen, myself, or both of us answer before the show is over, chuck them in the chat now, and we shall get to it. So after the Sens, they play the Sharks. Now the Sharks have been an incredibly fun team to watch this year with a tons of young talent, and I mean, gosh, maybe the best young talent in the league in Macklin Celebrini. He is seriously a treat to watch night in, night out. And you can't forget about Will Smith as well, the 4th overall pick from the year prior. That's just also been a force to watch for San Jose. That being said, no one is going to pretend like this is a team that is trying to be good this year. They're trying to be bad for one more year before they start to pull things around. They're dead last in the Pacific Division with just 27 points. The Canucks, 38 points, should be a much better team. 3 games in hand, too. It's a game where you really can't lose. You have to find a way to beat this San Jose team, and especially after a game where the Sens are going to play some really high-energy hockey, and so is San Jose. So it could be a bit of a trap game, especially if the Sens kind of beat up Vancouver a little bit. But I don't want to hear any excuses for the Canucks. This is a game that they need to come away with a W in, given that San Jose is winning less than half of their games.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. That San Jose team, like, I totally agree with you. They've been really fun to watch. But let's crush them, please. No, they definitely have to come away with it. And I think, those wins, those kinds of wins, add, fuel to their vibe and their energy in the room too, right? I mean, if you go on a massive down, it's harder to come back up, right?
Yeah.
But if you get that win, you secure that energy, that can carry over. So it's definitely super, super important to, make sure that your guys are showing up that day and you take the win.
Yeah, 100%. So look, like that's a game where if you just take a look at the schedule, you feel good about it, you feel confident about it. But honestly,
Yeah.
it's kind of the only one here that I do just looking forward to towards the new year too. So you play the Kraken on borderline a back-to-back game. The Canucks actually have quite a few games sprinkled in here and there, but you play them on the 28th of December and then the 2nd of January. And the Kraken, another team where you're hoping to come away with a victory against, but of course that's much less kind of a dead cert. But in terms of the playoffs and the way that the Canucks have been playing, if they go on a bit of a skid here, it'll be really bad. A lot of divisional matchups here. The Flames are just 2 points back of the Canucks, and the Kraken are just 6 points back. So if you think about each Kraken game in terms of the difference in the Pacific Division, if you win or lose, it's equivalent of a 4-point gap. You need to take both those games to feel good about where you are in the division. And I'm not saying that they will, and I'm not saying they absolutely have to, but to feel good about where you are in the division, I mean, this is not a write-off year for the Canucks where, we're guaranteed to make the playoffs. Coming into the year, it felt like that. But honestly, right now, you really can't feel like that, especially given how tight things are in the Central Division. The wild card race might end up going to 2 teams in the Central and none in the Pacific. I mean, the Canucks really want to be able to rack up as many points as we can here. So these divisional matchups are all that more crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I feel like it's also times like this that we're really, really missing out with our guys that have been injured. So now some are back. But I mean, like Hronek, right? We're missing him right now. Oh man. It kind of makes you wonder like how things would be going if he was in the lineup. Now, we can play what if forever and it's not going to solve anything. But, it is that kind of piece of, if we actually get a chunk of time in the schedule where we have a healthy squad, what is that going to look like then?
Yeah, and that is a great question because right now, of course, missing Filip Hronek's a huge thing. Everyone's talked about just how bad the puck moving has been from the back end for this Canucks roster. I mean, of course, one of the biggest perpetrators of that is the absence of Filip Hronek, because he has been great for Vancouver when he's in the lineup. I do think that we have yet to see a resurgence of that kind of 40-game stretch of when him and Hughes just absolutely took over every shift they were on their ice. I mean, they were so unreal for a 40-game stretch last year. I think that's a big reason why the Canucks were succeeding so much. And we've seen Hronek be good, but not quite that dominant since. And I've been content with his play. I think he's hovered around meeting expectations. And so not having him in the lineup is a huge, huge thing, because just another guy that can't move the puck from the back end. And I mean, outside of Quinn Hughes, it really doesn't feel like anyone is confident on that second power play unit. And Hronek can quarterback that second power play unit pretty effectively. So that's another thing that goes to the wayside. And another reason why power play 1 has to be so effective is because power play 2 just feels like it has no gusto. Big reason for that is the absence of Hronek. But while a fair amount of the issues do feel like they would be fixed by Hronek, there's no denying that this team is still just not playing well enough with him gone.
Absolutely. I think also, hey, what if we let Hughes pick who his new partner's going to be? Yeah, let him choose. Who do you think you're going to work well with, Hughes? Go for it. Let's bring him on board.
It's a tough one, because honestly... Oh, you mean outside of the Canucks for a trade. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, in an ideal world, they'd be able to grab nearly anyone if the price is right, kind of thing. I'm not entirely sure who I want. It just so depends who's available. Obviously, like, the biggest question mark is Rasmus Andersson in Calgary. Is just what kind of team is Calgary trying to be this year? They're about 4 points back from a playoff spot right now. If they're smart, they should not try and be good this year. They're not going to be good enough to make a legitimate claim to the cup. But obviously, Rasmus Andersson, a crazy good defender on a really good contract. So if he's not available, I'm not even necessarily sure who I would want. Maybe Bowen Byram in Buffalo. But anyways, yeah, honestly, there's so little options for Hughes within the organization that when you said, oh, let's just have Hughes pick, I genuinely don't know what he'd pick right now. There's no one in the team that has really shown. Myers and Hughes we've seen in the past, it just doesn't really work. Brandstrom and Hughes, you're really going to put your two small puck-moving defensemen together, especially not in a Tocchet comp. That's never going to happen. And then Juleson, no, we've seen that. Nay, I don't think we've seen that, and I don't think I want to see that. It's just, none of these options feel inspiring to me, aside from Filip Hronek. So his return can't come soon enough. Unfortunately, it won't come soon, as I don't think he's slated until, well, the rough timeline being like the end of January. So we will see how that goes. I'm going to gear us towards period 4 here. Before I do that, Karen, do you have any kind of last overall thoughts about tonight or anything else you wanted to get out about the Canucks?
I feel like I've repeated myself a few times at this point, just because it's like, you know, and I just feel like it's kind of a trend in the media as well. Just like, you know, the big guys got to step up. Lankinen is great. Sherwood's awesome. What's going on with PD, and who are we getting in a trade? And that kind of sums it up.
Yeah, right? I mean, I have no notes. That's absolutely perfect. So, I mean, I'm gonna just say, yep, that's right, and move us on to the fourth period, which is, of course, sponsored by our merch that we've got here, our wonderful Game Over merch. And actually, we do have a sale right now as well. For all the winter garments, so that's like the beanies, as well as the, here, let me actually get the discount code for you guys. I just realized I don't have that saved right here. I should. But the beanies and hoodies are on a discount right now. 15% off with a different sale dropping on Boxing Day. So all your winter products that you want, use the code GOHOLIDAYS, GOHOLIDAYS, for 15% off on all the winter products. And it's super comfortable merch. So consider supporting us by buying some of that. We greatly appreciate all the support that you guys have shown us this year.
And I am wearing my shirt today.
Exactly. And you can agree yourself, it's pretty comfortable, right?
Okay, yeah, honestly, like, I'm neurodivergent. I'm very, very sensitive to material and stuff. It's so soft. It's so cozy. I cut sleeves off all my shirts, but it's so cozy, and the neck isn't like choking you. It's really great. No, they're awesome shirts.
Nice, yeah, and of course, all designed by Brady Chales from Game Over Winnipeg too. So it's nice to be able to say that they're designed in house as well. So looking to our chat now, 4 questions. Elfred saying, after the games versus Ottawa and San Jose, do you think the Canucks need a breakthrough reset as a team? The schedule this month was a grind. There was a game every second day, and then back to back as the cherry on top. Now, I think that in an ideal world, yes, but just looking at reality, they don't really get much of a break as a team. You get 5 days over the holidays. You play a game on the 23rd, you're back to work on the 28th, and then you have a 3 day off period there. So that's the only break that they're really going to get. So you have to hope that that's going to be enough for them. I do think in an ideal world, yes, absolutely. So much of what this team is going through is very clearly mental. No one in their right mind is doubting what Miller and Pettersson can do in terms of hockey talent and skill. Everyone is doubting what they can do mentally right now. And I think biggest of all, they're doubting themselves.
That's honestly, like, as a past athlete myself, I never played hockey, but I was a competitive softball player, and I know from personal experience how much your own doubting and your own psychology can really, really, really just sewer your game completely. You start overthinking everything. And I mean, you could even see it in that play that Petey made today where he kind of messed up the power play. Like he's not he doesn't have that confidence that he did. He,
Yeah.
you know, he his mojo is gone. Like
He's missing
so
that Petey swagger for sure.
exactly. And that I think is just such a big piece that can't be overlooked. Like they need to find something to, bring back the pep in their step. I don't know if it's, that super awesome sports psychologist I've heard you talk about before with that hung with that other guy
Yeah,
and brought
Nathan
him back to
McKinnon.
life.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But something. I think honestly, just going to the question in the chat here, yeah, I think they could use a break. I think it's up to them to use it effectively so that they can actually reset and, come back refreshed and, with their, mind on the game and everything. But yeah, I think that's definitely you can tell when a player is doubting their abilities and, you know, the media really doesn't help either when you're
Yeah,
looking
I
at
mean,
someone else, probably, right?
yeah, of course, the irony of complaining about media while being on a Vancouver show ripping Pettersson is not lost on us, but
Right.
it's
Right.
true. And I mean, you have to have some level of accountability. Now, Conrad, of course, friend of the show, Game Over Calgary, asking, do you, like Kaja, believe that Rick Tocchet belongs in the Vancouver Harbor? Now, this is something we're starting to see more and more on social media is people calling for Rick Tocchet to get out of here. No. Dude, this market just has no faith in goaltenders, huh? Bruce Boudreau was given a year, told to pack his bags. Now people are saying the same for Rick Tocchet. He had turned this team around, and at a certain point, you have to give a coach a chance. Because if you just keep firing coaches, all that says is that you don't think your team is good enough to be coached, and you just hope for the new coaching buff over and over and over again. And you'll get it. It won't be good enough. You'll either just miss the playoffs like you did with Bruce, or you'll maybe go a little bit into the playoffs, get some hope, and then fire them again next year? No. Give him a chance to figure things out. I don't think that it would be fair to fire him when your stars are playing this badly, because you cannot possibly tell me that the issues with Miller and Pettersson are 100% coaching. Now, I'm not going to say that his style doesn't get old. That dump and chase style that results in absolutely no shots, it just isn't working outside of your depth. Now, your depth lines are doing it really well. Your forward lines aren't. So, okay, part of that might be Rick Tocchet, but no, with how badly your star players are playing tonight, that's not on a coach, not to that level. It might be to some level, not to that level.
Yeah, and honestly, going what David W was saying in the chat here to respond to that as well. Yeah, like Talkit may not know how to motivate those players on that level, and that's why I think maybe bringing somebody else in, some sort of a motivational coach or psychology sport person, whatever, just so that they can, you know, gets in a better mindset because mindset is huge. Like, but I also think like I remember when they got rid of Coach V, and I remember when they got rid of Boudreaux, and all of those, and it's like, okay, those were moves that were made, But what big changes did we see from those big changes?
No,
Right?
exactly. Okay, so Conrad's now saying I may agree with Kaja. I'm gonna put my foot down. I'm gonna adamantly defend Rick Tocchet. What kind of a coach do you actually want? Because Bruce Boudreau and Rick Tocchet could not have been more different kinds of coaches. One, a very loose players coach. The guys plays a loose system, high offense, let in a lot of goals. Let's go, get your legs pumping. All right, now move back to Rick Tocchet. Solid as a rock, airtight defense, slow game, systems hockey, win your board battles, rotate the puck, cycle, always the safe play, never the flashy play. You have the two ends of that. Okay, before that, same core, mind you, Travis Green. Okay, well now much more similar to Rick Tocchet. Again, slightly different way that he executes it, but a very much a systems coach which plays a schematic style of hockey. None of this worked. Absolutely none of this. Now, you can say with Travis Green, he didn't get the supporting pieces to the cast. Okay, fine. But I want someone to actually name who they think would make the Canucks a fixable team right now. Because here's the thing, you're using the analogy of the Flames shipping out Daryl Sutter, which I did like. Daryl Sutter had been there for years. He'd been given such a long leash to figure that out. And also, not to mention, disrespecting the hell out of those rookies. I did not like Daryl Sutter in his final year as a Flame. But we've seen Rick Tocchet for a year. I don't even know if we've seen him for a full year. Didn't even join in January of last. So, you can't give him this short of a leash when he gave you that good of a playoff run off of that poor of a Canucks team when he picked it up. I think it's ridiculous fans calling for his firing this early in the season. Now, the one defense that I'll say is I do understand that if the Canucks somehow go on a complete slide, then you might not have time to bring in a new coach and still make the playoffs. So if you want to fire a coach sooner rather than later, but you should not want to fire the coach. He has given you too much in too short of a time to let a few games decide this, especially when it's been a few games where your superstar has been so bad. I don't know. I get the coaching criticisms, but I think calling for his firing is ridiculous at this stage of his Canucks tenure.
I think too, actually, I might kind of oh, maybe Manny Malhotra. Okay, yeah. I like
Now you're
Manny
on board.
Malhotra.
Yeah.
He was on my 2011 squad. Let's go. No, but I think it's a huge trend that when nothing else is working and we don't know what the fix is, the default is always get rid of the coach.
Yeah.
That always seems to be the default. And I have seen so many coaches come and go over the years, and we're still no closer than we were in 2011 to a cup. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's working. Now, I definitely agree 2 shots in a period will not cut it. It won't. And that's the thing, is that wouldn't cut it for any team anywhere.
Yeah.
But that's the thing too, is once the players are on the ice and the game is going, the coach, he's taking more of a back seat at that point. He's kind of just trying to manage things as they come, right? So, sorry, Eagles.
Yeah, I saw that little jab.
No, I think that we kind of have to ride the wave with Tocchet a little bit. I think we can't keep defaulting to get rid of the coach, because too many changes all at the same time is also another huge risk. I think some risks have to be taken, but I don't think yet that that's one of them.
Yeah, and then I was gonna say Scott Gomez, by the way, Conrad. I could have told you that he was an assistant coach last year, and then they promoted him to, I believe he's GM and coach at the Surrey Eagles. I'm almost certain that's just his whole show now. He won the Fred Page Cup with him as an assistant coach last year. Nice guy. But talking about some more realistic coaching options here. You're saying Mitch Glove and Manny Malhotra. Now, I'm going to shut those down right away, because I'm not saying they couldn't work out. I like the idea of Mitch Glove more. But do you think that the Canucks, who are so desperate to kind of win right now, or at the very least within the next couple of years, want to give a guy their first shot in the league, especially as first shot in the league as a head coach? Of course, Malhotra had, I think, 6 years of being an NHL assistant coach with both Vancouver and Toronto, now an AHL head coach. And then Mitch Glove was with, I believe, Calgary in the AHL, and now he's the assistant coach of the the league-leading Washington Capitals. But still, I just don't know if this Canucks team wants to put an inexperienced head coach into what right now seems like it might be the most difficult coaching job in the league. Trying to get a bunch of really good players to get along and get the most out of a group. And there's so much pressure, too. Again, this could kill a fresh NHL coach's career. If you go into a situation where you have the amount of talent that this team has and then not getting up to it, that could sewer a coach's career right there. And then Conrad saying Mitch Love's been getting a lot of credit for the Caps rebound. I don't doubt that. I just doubt whether or not Canucks brass is going to want to put a first-time NHL head coach into this position, especially given how high the expectations are in this market.
I think one argument that could be made for Malhotra, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily a good move. I'm just saying that one thing in his favor is that he knows this team. He knows this town. He knows how fickle it can be. He was part of this crew. He's been on either side of this. I mean, yeah, if things slide, yeah, that's the thing. I think Manny knows this team and can actually be able to empathize with the boys and be like, look, guys, like, I know that this is tough. I was here. I know what this is like. And that could be another way to actually, reach the guys that are super, super hard on themselves right now.
Yeah, that is true. I still just don't think that we're in a position where replacing Rick Tocchet is currently the best idea for the team. I mean, obviously, it's always an option, but I think when the on-ice issues of the roster are so blindingly obvious that I think you have to fix those before you can fire your coach. Because I just think, out of respect for Rick Tocchet, you can't fire him when the most obvious issues are on the ice and are on the player product. So I do think that you have to kind of keep him around, at least for the foreseeable future. He's done too much. I mean, people forget, he is the winningest Canucks coach of all time by points percentage. Already! More than AV. More than anyone you want to point to in the past. Quinn. Anyone. He is the winningest points percentage coach. And you're going to give up on that because of a stretch of bad games, which isn't even that bad, mind you. The Canucks are currently in a playoff spot. Like, I do understand the panic. I really do. I'm not trying to downplay why this market has been panicking. But we're nowhere at the stage where a team needs to fire the coach. And I don't think that this team needs to get that in their heads as even a serious conversation. I think that you have to power through what has been a rough stretch. But again, maybe not as rough a stretch as people actually think.
Yeah. Yeah, we've weathered some storms here in Vancouver, pun definitely intended, before, right? And they always seem to find their way back a little bit. So, I mean, he hasn't even had a full season yet, right? So, I don't know. They can rent players. Can they rent Manny Malhotra to be like a pep talk guy?
Just bring him up as an assistant coach just for the run. Yeah, could be a fun one. Could be a fun one. I think that is where I shall kind of steer our stream to a close here. Don't fire Rick Tocchet. But I think that we'll move towards the end here. As great as a conversation that's been to end it on. I think I've hit all the points that I wanted to hit. Talked about this quite frankly failure of a game, especially given the first 20 minutes. Absolute failure of a second 40 minutes. And we'll look forward to the Sens game on Sunday. And again, or Saturday, sorry. The Sens game will be on the Ottawa Senators Game Over channel. So please do check that one out. Crossover episode with the amazing folks at Game Over Ottawa. And win-win for me. Get that Sens wagon to keep on rolling, or my Canucks bounce back. I mean, I have two horses in this race, so fine by me either way. But for now, that is where I shall bid you adieu. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate the support as always. Giving us a like, a subscribe, and a view. You guys are the best. Thank you to Karen Krobach for joining me on today's show. And thank you to both of us for showing up, unlike the Canucks. So we'll end on that note. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great rest of your night.